going to talk about some bad habits in the sales world, some things that don't typically work out so well. We're going to get into it on today's podcast episode. Hey, my name is Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast. You've come to the right place to learn how to do business better. There's no fluff on this podcast, just good advice. Let's hear a quick ad from a business that sponsored today's episode, and we'll get right into it. See you soon. There's one single piece of advice that I give to business owners who are ready to scale their business drastically. And that's knowing exactly what you need to hand off so that you can continue focusing on what you're an expert in. It amazes me when I talk to business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping and tax prep, and worse, that they're going through all this paperwork at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, even midnight, slaving away trying to make sense of all of the numbers for their business. Business owners who are making it happen have already figured out that you can't do it all yourself. That's why I recommend Steve Lay with Equity Business Solutions. Not only is he an expert in bookkeeping and tax prep, but what I love about Steve is that he'll sit down with you and help you make sense of the value of your business beyond just reading a spreadsheet. You'll be able to make better decisions, and more importantly, you're going to save yourself the crucial time you would have spent going through QuickBooks or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is that keeps us up late at night. So save yourself some time and some money by giving Steve Lay a call at Equity Business Solutions, and he'll show you the value beyond your numbers. Go to equitybusinesssolutionsllc.com to find out more. So I shared about this story at a local networking group a couple weeks back, and I couldn't help but I keep thinking about it, and it says a lot about sales and how we get it wrong. And I was giving advice to someone on Tuesday morning at our growth group, and someone she's new to the game, new to the business game, and had a lot of emotional investment in this sale that she was trying to make. And I said, hey, you got to know. I mean, I've been there. I've had these feelings where there's so much emotionality in the sale, whether it's because you're new to the business world and you're just trying to close that sale and take care of your bottom line, which I've had seasons like that where I'm like, oh my gosh, if I don't close this sale, what am I going to do? And then you have customers where you're like, dude, this customer would mean it would be game changing. And so you have so much emotionality involved in closing that customer. So I had a $35,000 quote, I think a couple years ago. And I was like, this is a pretty big deal. Didn't happen, didn't go through. It was neither here nor there, it just didn't happen. But certainly I had a lot of emotional feelings around it. And then I was having breakfast with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, and he had a quote for a customer who runs a hotel group, and the invoice was like $135,000 per year. And I go, how you feeling about that proposal? And he was like, it would be life-changing. It would be huge. So we all get these deals, whether they're big or small. I mean, at some point, we're just so energized around it. We want it to happen. We really know what it would mean for our business, and I think that's totally normal. There's nothing wrong with you if you get heartbroken if a deal didn't go through. There's nothing wrong with you if you're super invested in a sale. These are all normal feelings and things that, we all feel this way, right? However, I want to share something that happened to me at my home and what it can teach us about business and sales. And the advice I gave to this young woman on Tuesday morning was, I said, hey, you can't be so, even though it's normal to be so emotionally invested, you can't be so invested because statistically speaking, you're only going to close a handful of the deals that come across your desk. And I think the statistics I've seen is that if you're an amazing salesperson, you're going to close a little under 1 in 3. If you're an average salesperson, 1 in 5. And if you're a pretty bad salesperson, 1 in 10. Bad's not a fair word. If you're newer to the sales game or you haven't put much thought into how to sell, about 1 in 10 usually. So why didn't you close the other ones? Is it because you're a terrible salesperson? Is it because you're just not any good at this, or yada, yada? And there's a whole science around this. There's a whole industry around dealing with objections and yada, yada. And I'm not downing any of that stuff, by the way. I think there is a merit to becoming better at sales. We've had a lot of content on the podcast even about how do you sell better? How do you have better sales conversations? How do you close deals? How do you close bigger deals than maybe you've done in the past? All that stuff has merit. However, I think what's also worth understanding is that many times a deal doesn't happen for a number of reasons that are outside of your control. One, what you want to charge is not what the customer wants to pay. And there is certainly something to be said around helping the customer see the value of what you sell and the price point. And I've certainly been on conversations where someone says, "Man, that's really out of our price point." And I've said, "Okay, well, typically that is what you're going to want to pay. So, is there a different way you're seeing this play out? Is there you have an alternative person you're talking to?" In fact, I was on a sales conversation just a couple months ago, and someone said, "Yeah, we talked to this guy who can do it for this price," and it was like half the price. And I was like, "Well, dude, definitely go with that. That's awesome. That's a great deal. I would definitely, take that person up on that price. I don't know how they're charging it, but I would definitely do that." Like I mentioned, there's a whole science around this and, helping people understand the value of what you sell. And sometimes having conversations help someone understand how far off base they are in terms of their expectations. So someone maybe calls and they say, "Hey, I want to get some good marketing for my business and I have a budget of $100." And you say, "Okay, well, what's the average return on investment? What's the average purchased order from a customer?" And they might say, "Oh, it's, $600." And so you say, "Okay, well, you're getting back $600 and you're only willing to spend $100 a month on this? Like, it doesn't really make much sense." So helping people understand this and understand how their expectations are out of whack or out of sync and don't make much sense can often be very useful in a sales conversation. So that's all part of my disclaimer on certainly there's merit to have this conversation on sales. Beyond all of that, though, there are people who very simply will not be your customer. They won't be your customer. Even if they called you to find out about your services, they aren't going to buy. They were never going to buy. They were never going to be your customer and work with your business. It just is what it is. And I have found that in life, when you move against the current of that, when you move against the momentum of that, it rarely pans out in your favor. I have a customer of mine who, we bought this WordPress maintenance plan, this WP maintenance plan website. We bought this agency, and one of the customers we had, I think we have like 30 websites through this customer, and he is moving a handful of his customers from WordPress to Webflow, which is another web platform you can build websites on. So we spoke over the phone. We had a video call and we talked about the business and talked about him and his expectations, had a great conversation. And today we talked again and he said, "Hey, yeah, actually moving these people off WordPress to Webflow and we can really manage the maintenance of it from there." So now I could have begged him and said, "No, no, Webflow's terrible. Don't do Webflow." But instead, what I said was, "Okay, great. I understand. Hey, thanks for letting me know. Hey, I appreciate your business. It's obviously it's a bummer to see the person go, but I said, "Hey, yeah, I appreciate your business." And I mean, geez, it was like $500, $600 a month that is now gone from monthly recurring revenue. So I said, "Yeah, I get it. I understand." Because this person's not going to change their strategy. He's not going to change the way they do business to keep me on as a service provider. It would be illogical to try to convince this person to continue to do business with me in that way. Now, naturally, part of this is like saving face and taking the high road and, being polite and all of this. But I think also the way he put it, I think is a great way to put it in general. Business and relationships really ebb and flow. And sometimes you really need someone's help and other times you don't. And I think about when I worked at the previous consulting company that I worked at, a really difficult conversation we had was when a customer has had long-term consulting help from us, how do we sell them on what's next? And the conversation I got into was I was like, I think some customers are just good. I think they're just good in the sense of like they paid us for the service, we did the service, and now they're good. They don't need anything else. I think sometimes we're so, sales oriented that we're really trying to think of, I know I can't fit the square peg in the round hole, but how can I fit the square peg in the round hole? I'm going to figure this out. So it's like, yeah, how do I convince this person to keep doing business with us? And, oh, we can also do this. And you start to like roll out these like separate services that are really not related to what you do just to keep the person on your, not payroll, but on, just your monthly revenue. And I've always been a fan of just like, hey, I think we're good. I think we're good. I think, you paid us for some work. We did the work. I'm here if you need me for something else, or if there's a reason for us to continue to collaborate and work together, I'm happy to do that. But I'm also okay being like, hey, we're good. And what I have found is that when you aren't trying to nickel and dime your customers, it builds up so much better of an experience where there's so much more good faith between you where they would be willing to come back and do business with you again in the future, where you are the first person they think to call. And I've had customers who verbatim have said that to me where we haven't done business in a while and they've given me a phone call and said, "Hey, you were the first person I thought to call." And that's been built through goodwill and trust. But even if the person never does business with you again, like I taught a class years ago at the local university on like ethics and being a person of integrity, really. You don't do the right thing because the right thing pays off. You do the right thing because the right thing is the right thing, even when it doesn't pay off. So that means owning a mistake and being honest about a mistake, even if it costs you a customer. That means telling a customer, yeah, I think we've done everything we said we were going to do, even if that person never comes back to do business with you again. Yes, doing these things are great strategies for customer retention and having people continue to do business with you in the future. But we also do these things because they're just the right thing to do. It's just the right thing to do those things. So here's why I say all this is because bad sales is really oriented around not doing what's best for the customer and instead doing what's best for you. And it's not a good way to do business. So I'll share about this person who came to my door. It's middle of summer is when I'm recording this episode. And somebody came to the door and they wanted to sell pest control services. So a little bit of the backstory here. I had a baby. I wasn't here. My mother-in-law was here. We were coming home from the hospital and salesperson, pest control person knocks on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Mother-in-law answers the door. He says, "Hey," which by the way, I've mentioned this before. It so gets under my skin, the fake facade of like friendliness. And I'm not saying I want someone to be a jerk when they come, but like like the house is blue. So someone knocks on the door and they say, "Hey, how's it going? Do you have a blue? I have a blue house. That's crazy. We both have blue houses." I've always loved people with blue houses. I've always said, man, if I could be friends with someone with a blue house, I just knew people with blue houses were just amazing people. So, hey, how you doing? Like the intros are sometimes so like out there that you're just like, hi, hello. And the way I've seen this oriented is like maybe I have like my kid left their bike on the driveway. So they knock on the door and "Hey, I noticed you have kid? I have kids. How old your kids?" "Oh, 5 years old." "Oh, I have a 5-year-old." "Oh, that's amazing." Isn't like being a dad the best thing in the world? And you're like, yeah, and eh, this isn't like meant to I don't mean this to sound cynical. It's just it's like, I know you're not genuinely interested. You took a sales class or someone said, first things first, connect with your potential buyer, and that will make the whole conversation better. So the person then, it's like, sinking in an ocean and clinging to the easiest data point possible. It's not genuine, it's not honest, and 9 times out of 10, people can sniff this out, and I would say, actually, it makes people less likely to do business with you from the get-go when you do things like that. But so the person knocked on the door and they said, "Hey, we're doing pest control, whatever." And the other thing that's really annoying is, again, these are all, I call it disingenuous. It's lying, is really what it is. But the person knocks on the door and they say, "Hey, a bunch of your neighbors in the neighborhood are all getting our pest control. And I thought I'd pop in and say, hey." And you're just like, "Are they really? I mean, am I the first house you went to? I mean, I've never seen your house here. And I mean, geez, that was like a month ago. I've never seen your car since then. So I mean, is that really a true statement? I don't know." But anywho, knocks on the door, says, "We're selling pest control." My mother-in-law says, "Hey, I think the guy who lives here, I think he's good. I think he's good. I don't think he wants it." And the salesperson goes, "Well, can I talk to him?" And she goes, "Well, he's not here. He's at the hospital. He's good. He's not interested." And then the guy goes, "Well, I'm gonna make a couple other, I'm walking around to visit the houses. I'll come back. I'll circle back here in a little bit." And my mother-in-law, real candid, she goes, "Please don't. Like, I'm telling you, he's not interested. Please don't come back." And he goes, I'm gonna come back. Don't worry." And she's like, Don't come back." This guy just, he's not taking no for an answer. So I get home, have this baby, we're exhausted. My mother-in-law says, she doesn't say anything actually, because I think she assumed that any reasonable, normal person, when told don't come back, would not have come back. And yet, knock, 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 person knocks on the door. My mother-in-law says, "Oh, it's probably a pest control guy. He said he was gonna come back. I told him you weren't interested." And I was like, "Okay." Open the door and, he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" I'm like, "Hey, yeah. Hey, man, we just had a baby, man. It's not a good time," And he said, "Well, hey, I wanna just say about our pest control services," and, gives, like, the whole, like, intro spiel, and I say, "Hey, I'm not interested." And, he said something like, he didn't say, like, "Can I come inside?" He said something like, "Hey, this time of year, we have a lot of, like, bugs. If you want, I can walk in and show you a couple of things that we would typically, like, put traps down and things like that." And I go, Well, no, we just got back from the hospital, so no." And he goes, "Oh, you went to the hospital? Is everything okay?" And I go, We just had a baby. I just mentioned that." So this guy's, like, going through the playbook so quickly. He's not even picking up on, which, being a great salesperson, listening is a great quality, picking up on details that they share with you. This person, which, to this person's credit, maybe was super nervous, maybe was first day on the job. I'm not saying it's an awful person or anything like that, but I said, "Well, I just said we just got back from the hospital." And he goes, "Oh, okay, okay. Well, I won't come in, but let me just show you a couple parts like around your perimeter." And I go, "Hey, man, we're good. I already have a pest control company." And we get in this back and forth that I really don't want to get into, where he's like, "Well, are they doing this? Are they doing this?" And I'm like, "Yep, yep, yep, we're good." He says, "Who are you using?" And I said, Rumble Pest Control. We've had them for years. We're really happy with them." And I say, like, all the things immediately. I'm just like, "Hey, we're not interested. We have Rumble. We're really happy. I'm not going to switch." Like, I say this as direct a way as I possibly can. And finally, after saying, like, no, like, 5 different times, because he's like, the other thing that's, like, a really annoying sales habit is not taking no for an answer and assuming the person wants the sale. So I say something like, "We're not interested. No, thank you." And he doesn't acknowledge it. Instead, he goes, "Yeah, yeah, I get it. Well, so over here, like, on the base of your perimeter, this is really where spiders are gonna crawl up. And so, like, what we would do is we do, like, a 3-foot barrier." Like, and I'm kinda like, "What's happening right now? Like, I've just told you no." So he says all this and I go, "Okay." And he goes, "So I'd love to get you all set up." And I go, I said, "Man, we're not interested. I don't want it." And he gets kind of, not testy, but he's like, "You're not interested?" And I go, "No, I'm not. I'm happy. I'm not looking for somebody." And he goes, "Well, here's what I'll tell you actually." And this is the part that, like, spawned the whole idea for this podcast episode. He goes, "Well, actually, what's interesting is most of our customers actually have another pest control company." And what they prefer to do is they actually prefer to have 2 pest control companies to really get enough coverage on their lawn and on the inside, and, it's actually something very common, and so if you want, we would love to get you set up today, and I'm kinda just like, I'm just like, "What?" And I go, "Most of your customers have 2 pest control companies?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, it's actually pretty normal." Again, bold-faced lie, not true. Come on, y'all. Like, come on. Like, what's going on here? And I go, no, man, I'm good. I think I prefer just to keep it to 1." And he says, and I felt bad for him, so I even said something like, "Hey, but, I know door-to-door sales is tough, man. You're out here making it happen, so best of luck." And I'm, like, walking away, and he's like, "Oh, door-to-door sales is tough?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, it is." And he's like, "Have you ever done door-to-door sales?" And I'm like, "Man, no, I just know it's tough, man." And he's like, "Okay, yeah." Well, he's, like, still talking to me as, like, I'm walking inside, and I pretty much closed the door as he was mid-sentence. I was just like, "We're good. Bye." Not a great ending experience with this person. And I walked away thinking like, I cannot believe where this conversation went. This is an example of someone moving against the tide in a sales conversation. If someone tells you, no, I'm not interested, that is not a challenge. It is not about your ego. And it's not up to you to convince that person or gaslight them or, put them through the ringer to where they have to say it. If someone says, I'm not interested, move on and understand when we talk about closing 20% of your deals, part of that is your sales acumen. The other part of it is wrong time, wrong person, wrong budget, what have you. So when someone says, I'm not interested, a better strategy is let's move on from this person and find the person who is in the right place with the right budget, with who sees the right value in what you sell. Again, as you become a better salesperson, you'll navigate this a little bit better. You'll know what to ask and see what wiggle room is there. So someone might say, I'm not interested in marketing services. I hate marketers. And you don't necessarily have to say, okay, I get it, click. You might say, hey, if you don't mind me asking, would it be okay if I asked what it is that you hate about marketers? Well, they never do what they say they're going to do. And I totally get that. And I have a lot of people in my industry who've absolutely done that. And it's absolutely something that bothers me as well. Hey, I'm not going to be pushy, but if you'd like to know how we guarantee our results and what we do and how we stay transparent, I'd be happy to have a conversation. But otherwise, no big deal. I think that's a very appropriate way to navigate your sales acumen in balance with this person laying out a boundary of I'm not interested. I don't want to do this. Now, I saw this play out on LinkedIn where somebody sent out a cold text to someone else. A salesperson sent out a cold text to a business, and the person said, I'm not interested, like single sentence. And the person responded, okay, just curious. Oh my gosh, this is like a PTSD term. Just curious. It's like you always know there's a a pitch coming after that. Person said, just curious. Is the answer no because you don't see the value in it or yada yada? I'd love to take 15 minutes, blah, 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 blah. And the salesperson is posting this message, by the way, on LinkedIn. And then the person replies in pretty aggressive, they're pretty mad. And they say something to the effect of, all salespeople are scammers. I do not want to do business with you. Do not contact me ever again. So, and also blocked the person, is what the salesperson said. So then where the salesperson was on LinkedIn was, is this too far? They posted the message and then they had a gift card that they were sending to the person that was like, hey, I know we left on a bad foot or the wrong foot, what have you. Here's lunch on me. I'd love to talk about how I might be able to help. And there was quite a bit of controversy around this, around people being like, the salesperson was saying like laughing emoji, was this too far? Was this okay? And some salespeople were like, you got it. You went after it. Good for you. But the one that I loved, that I resonated the most was like one of the top comments. And this person basically said, dude, let it go. The person said no. They asked you not to contact them again. and then they blocked you and you're still reaching out to them. This is like I saw a headline today of a realtor who was arrested for sending 156,000 follow-up messages to one of their prospective customers, and they got arrested for harassment. Like, y'all, there's got to be a point where, like, what's the deal with psychotic, like, it's like ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, but in the sales world of like, you said no, but what I heard was maybe. If you want to do better in sales, it's all about right person, right budget, right timing. And here's what I'll tell you. These are often the first conversation points I have in a sales conversation with someone. When we're talking marketing, when we're talking consulting, whatever it is, I almost always start with the problem they're having, so I know if that's something I can help, and the typical budget or price point around it. So I say, hey, this is probably about what you're going to spend in working with me. Is that in your budget? And people will either say, that's exactly what I thought it was, or they'll say, oh, goodness, no, I thought it was going to be $100. And then you can say, yeah, I'm really not the best fit for that. And you can do this in a polite way. I mean, someone reached out to, I actually do get these kinds of requests every now and then. But I think of one in particular, the person said, hey, I really want to work together. And I said, hey, this is really kind of what my fee structure looks like. And they said, man, I'd rather actually do like equity or, if I make sales or what have you, I'd be happy to pay through that. And I was like, that's just not what we do. Sorry about that. And it was polite and fair and what have you. But focusing on that is typically in your best interest because it saves you time from a potentially destructive contract or a big time waster, which when you run a business, your time is so precious, you don't have time that you can waste with those kinds of customers. So anyway, move with the tide as you think about the kinds of businesses that you want to work with and stop wasting time chasing after people who they were never going to date you anyway. They were never going to do business with you anyway. It's going to save you a lot of agony and misery as you move forward. Hey, that's today's Good Advice podcast episode. If you're a first-time listener, what are you waiting on? Click that subscribe or follow button to keep getting good advice wherever you are. Don't forget we do it for Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice if you want to support the podcast. Other than that, I so appreciate you. That's today's Good Advice. We'll see you later.